thank you so much for your patience. And so I wanted to introduce the session here today. I just started working with Foundation on Drupal 8 about a month ago, and I was looking for a way to make kind of the editorial experience a little better, where I could create sort of different responsive kind of elements in my page. And so in the past, as a developer, it's easy enough to just go in, set your body field to full HTML and just start hanging divs and classes everywhere and placing content where you want. But that's not really a good practice, right? So I started playing around with paragraphs in Display Suite and see what I could come up with, and I kind of reached that, hey, this is kind of cool, maybe other people would be interested kind of moment. So about me, I run a small design and development shop. We've been in business 11 years now, so that's kind of a milestone I'm proud of. I first started working with Drupal in 2008. I'd played around with it, but that was the first job that actually paid me anything, so that's what I count. And I've just been playing around with Drupal 8. I've done a couple little side project kind of things over the last year, but now it's starting to, actually pay, which is what I care about as a business owner is, does the job pay? So if you've got any questions after the session, you want to reach me, that's my contact information. That's Google+. There's a pretty good community on Google+ for Drupalers, so I highly recommend, if you're not involved in that, go over there. So why bother? All right, so for years, I've kind of relied on Omega theme, right, on Drupal 7. Is anybody in here? I know a couple of you are familiar with the Omega theme. So it was a pretty good theme and had matured a long way. But it kind of, I've reached that point where it's like, do I really want to stick with Omega? It has some limitations. I really liked Omega 4, where it was going with SUSE and Singularity and Sass and all that sort of stuff. And then there's like some drama around that. I don't know if anybody keeps up with the drama. I usually try not to, but Omega 5, not really sure what's going on with it. The Omega 4 is for Drupal 7 only. Omega 5 goes on to Drupal 8. But, as cool as the Omega responsive theme is, it's not really a UI framework, right? It's sort of a theme framework. And so that's kind of the key difference between a theme like Omega and something like Zurb Foundation, which is a complete UI framework. Everything from the class structure that it gives you, it gives you a lot of, it's kind of opinionated, right? It says, okay, buttons are going to be this color unless you override it, This is how a header is going to look unless you change it. Gives you a ton of classes and stuff like that. It comes with a bunch of JavaScript already, some HTML attributes that you just hang this stuff on your HTML and you get a pretty quick site. So I've been using Foundation for prototyping because it's just so fast, because you just get so many, toys out of the box. It runs on Node Sass. So if you're coming from Ruby Sass and you haven't played with Node Sass, oh my gosh, it's so much faster. It's unbelievable how much faster it compiles Sass. So that's pretty cool. And so here I was, this is a site that I've been kind of working on. And so, there's different kind of little components in here that you want them to be responsive, right? Kind of common UI things, grid type of layout here, 3 across. Here we've got kind of the image and the text kind of alternating back and forth. Just really common patterns, design patterns. So here's another kind of page, right? So, we've again got the alternating text. Here we kind of got a little timeline thing. It looks really bad on this screen. It's pretty low res, but just this little alternating pattern, whatever. This is just something that a designer might hand you and say, hey, look, this is how we want this content type or page type to be laid out. And so as a themer, you can go in, you're going to want classes on stuff in order to identify it, right? And so you've got to spend a lot of time. Yes?
If you press F11, it'll expand to the full.
It will.
You might have. Sorry.
Function F11. F11. I think it's all. I think that's here.
You press the FN key and then.
I hit the FN key and that's.
Volume. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. I think that's as good as it's going to get, unfortunately, for me, unless you want to come up here and play with it. So at any rate, if this is a single content type, how do you give an editor the ability to essentially drop in content and have it follow a specific pattern that a themer could write a little bit of Sass or CSS for and get consistent layouts, but the editor has the flexibility. So that was kind of my challenge. So what I wanted to do for today, for this presentation, is I wanted to have a responsive field widget that an editor would be able to drop in their content and it would just automatically be kind of follow a responsive pattern, if you will. So alternating text on one side, image on the left, and then on a mobile device it just drops down into a single column, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so for the setup, obviously you need some sort of development environment. You need some sort of an editor or IDE. You got to have Drupal 8, the Zurb Foundation theme, display suite, paragraphs, and a little bit of determination. Better if you just go ahead and have Drush. Everybody uses Drush, right? And NVM. If you're not familiar with Node, you're probably not familiar with NVM. If you are going to compile Node Sass, NVM is the Node version manager. So it's really good to, Node changes really fast. Unlike Ruby, which moves really slowly. I think after, 8 years, they're still on version 2 or something. Node changes all the time. So you want to use a version manager for your Node projects. Now I have instructions at the end with some links to where to get some of this stuff. So if you've got any questions afterwards, please ask. Okay, so minimum setup. Install Drupal, Zurb Foundation, paragraphs, display suite, and a bonus if you install field group, right? So this is a minimal kind of install. Create a child theme. So if you got Drush, super easy, Drush FST, and then you type in a theme name, right? And it kind of goes through a little wizard where you fill in a few blanks. For the Sass setup, you're going to want to, you've got to install Git if you're not already using Git for your project. I highly recommend it. So instructions for NVM, how to install Node, and install Node Sass, right? Does anybody have any questions about that so far? I kind of jumped through this slide because this isn't really what the presentation's about, but this will, if you're going to be building a site and you're going to be creating themes and that sort of thing, this will make your life, this is kind of a boilerplate kind of thing. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so Foundation comes with a little CLI tool. So Again, a couple of steps to install the Foundation CLI. It'll go, I believe it goes in your node modules folder when you install it. You also install Bower, which installs a bunch of other stuff. So you run a couple of like little command line things, and all this stuff starts building for you. So it's pretty handy with the Foundation CLI, and it all runs through Gulp, and all you do is hit npm start. You can pass npm a couple of commands like build production or whatever, and it'll minify all of your files and that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's get to the actual Drupal stuff. So paragraphs. So we're going to start off, we're going to create a paragraph. This paragraph is going to have two fields, an image field and a text field. I called it a selfie and an ego. So we're going to change the layout. Okay, so the layouts are down at the bottom. If you've got Display Suite, if you've never used Display Suite, you can change layouts. Now, the Foundation theme comes with a few layouts, including this 2-column row. Okay, so easy enough. You drag and drop your images into one of the column, your image into one column, and your text into the other column. Okay, so that's going to be paragraph number 1. I think I called this ZF IMG left, right? So ZF for Zurb Foundation, image on the left. Okay, so we're going to create a second one of these fields because we want the image and the text to alternate, right? So just kind of a pattern that, okay, this paragraph will have this kind of layout, and the other paragraph will have the opposite, but they're going to use the same Foundation layout. So here's where kind of the magic for this comes, is the paragraph container. Is anybody in here not use paragraphs? Okay. So I guess I should step back. Paragraphs is basically a way for, have you ever used field collection? Okay, so it's like field collection, but they're kind of core entities, not core entities, but the collection is an entity. In my experience, paragraphs scales a lot better. I've had projects with field collections with like 130 fields that you keep adding them, and it just grinds the site to a halt. So I haven't had that experience with paragraphs. I don't know, maybe somebody's had other experiences with it, but paragraph seems to be the more Drupal-y way of doing it, I guess, or the direction that I think the Drupal community is going in, is towards the paragraphs versus field collection. But if you're familiar with field collection, some of these concepts are going to be similar. So the idea of the container paragraph is we're going to have one field that we add to our content type that is a paragraph reference field. So through this one field, we'll get here in a second, you see this paragraph at the bottom. These are the paragraph types that are going to be inside of my container paragraph. I've got my 2 widget fields. So I'm going to create a content type, and I'm going to get rid of the body field. I don't need that field anymore. And I'm just going to add my paragraph reference field. Okay, so the paragraph that I'm going to reference is going to be my container paragraph. So once you've saved your content type, now you're going to go to add content. So I've kind of taken screenshots of what the edit screen looks like. So notice there's the title, but there's no body field. And then I've got my paragraph container field. So when you click this, what happens is it kind of expands, and then it gives me the option of creating one of my 2 field widgets that we just created with paragraphs. One of them will have image on the left, text on the right, and the other one will be text on the left, image on the right. So after you've created it, you can see, it's really blurry, I guess you can't really see, but so this is one paragraph widget, and then I've added a second paragraph widget down below. And so with paragraphs, you can actually drag and drop and organize these, but this is a chunk, this is a single paragraph, okay? And here's another single paragraph. And you can go keep adding as many of these as you want. So if you wanted to have a whole page that flowed with image on the left, text on the right, alternating all the way down, you know, have 50 items, you can do that as an editor without having to know any classes. You don't have to know anything about theming or classes or anything like that. You just have to say, I want my image on the left. So on the desktop, so it's really ugly on this screen, but you can, this is sort of the results. We've got an image on the left, text on the right. Super easy, super self-explanatory. But we have a problem with the out-of-the-box foundation template, right? So normally what you would expect is on a mobile device, if you had that kind of alternating text image pattern, when you go to mobile and it's a single column thing, you would expect image, text, right? But for some reason, we've got text, we've got an image, text, image. And that's kind of an odd workflow, right? Usually the text describes the image and that sort of thing. And so why is that? Well, because the foundation theme comes with the 2 column, comes with 1 class though. It's the medium 6. So it basically says, so foundation being a 6 column or a 12 column based grid. 6 means at medium, you get half of that, half of whatever the container is going to be 6. There's no push and pull classes that come with this, right? So it's just source order. Whatever you stick on the left is going to show up on mobile above whatever you stick on the right. So at any rate, it's pretty annoying. It's simplistic, it gets you started, but it's not enough, right? It does not really give our editors the results that they're expecting. So we're going to try again. This time we're going to try Display Suite Expert Mode. So in Display Suite, there's a configuration. You can enable field templates, and I've got the kind of the path for you. You can set the field templates to Expert Mode. And then what that does is it gives you the ability to alter the field templates, right? So we're going to go into our right and left paragraphs widgets, the original 2 paragraph fields. And we're going to, here, when you enable expert mode, you get a little gear that when you click it, it opens up this configuration. And you can change the markup of the individual components that make up a field. So if you look at Drupal, outputted source code, you get like a field wrapper and a label wrapper and all that kind of stuff. Well, you can alter those wrappers, whatever element it is, and what classes are attached to it. And so here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to actually alter the source order of our content, right? So before we were physically putting the text and the image in alternate kind of columns, right? Each one wrapped in a medium 6. Now we're going to actually put them in the same column, but we're going to use push and pull classes to force them to appear in reverse order, okay? And so what that does for you is, like on a medium, if you've pushed it 6, it goes over here, and then you pull the other one over, but on small, it keeps the source order. So I'll just kind of show you the results, okay? So you'll notice same kind of layout across on the desktop, but we get the more natural image, text kind of flow. So this kind of concept will work with any classy theme. So something like a bootstrap, anything that's going to have grid classes that you want, that you can just hang on containers and get those grid layouts. Okay, so the conclusion that for display suite expert mode, okay, so here's the limitations. The classes are at the field level, so you can't have multiple fields because there's not a container, right? So each field, the grid classes are actually tied to. The classes take a lot of space, and the field that Display Suite gives you to put classes in there is limited to some number of characters. I can't remember, but I hit the limit on it, and that's how I know that there's a limited amount of space. So, if you try to put in, Foundation being a very verbose sort of class thing, if you've got large 6, medium 4, large push, it just goes on and on. You're not going to be able to do that. So really intricate kind of responsive stuff is not really going to be attainable with this method. Might be good enough for simple purposes, if they just want, hey, I just want my images to be on one side and my text to be on the other. So workarounds. Okay, so a really good workaround to get started with this is install the field group module. If you've never ever used field group, it basically lets you group fields together. So you can did I bump something?
Maybe the video cable is a little bit looser.
It's Windows. It came. Okay. It's the cable. Okay. So the field group module, what that'll allow you to do is create sort of your container columns for your grid classes. And then you can, so instead of just a single text field, if you want to add a title and a text field to it, you can put your classes on those field group containers. There's not really a workaround for the class input side. I notice size, the actual field, I think it's maybe limited to 58 characters or something like that. So if you've got a really long string of classes that you need to add, expert mode just isn't going to work for you, okay? It does work really well for very simple kind of use cases, and it's really quick and easy to do. Okay, so the next thing, custom layout. So Display Suite ships, as well as, I believe, panels as a dependency, comes with the layout plugin. Has anybody played with the layout plugin? Okay, so layouts are super cool. So in the older system, you could create a layout in your theme and alter the markup that, say, panels gives you, or the markup that Display Suite gives you. So what we're going to do, the easy way to start, is to just jump into your Foundation theme, grab sort of an existing layout that is sort of what you want, and then you can alter it. Okay, so I grabbed the Display Suite, the 2-column layout. You change the name, and you really can't read the classes on here, but I've added my push-pull classes to the wrappers. Okay, so content left, content right, and then I've added, my classes in here that are going to force those columns to appear in the correct order. Okay, to create a layout, you just copy it into your themes, theme name, layouts. It's an entire folder. It comes with a twig template and a thumbnail that'll display in the UI. And then to get Drupal to recognize that there's a new layout, you get you create a layouts.yaml file, Okay, so it's theme name.layouts.yaml. And here we go. The code you need to make it work. Okay, so you'll notice here, regions, left, okay, image, right, label, text. It's actually really easy to use. And I made it even easier because at the end of the presentation, I've got a link to my Bitbucket where this theme is, and you can download the theme and see all the stuff in there. Okay, so now we're going to configure paragraphs. Only one of these paragraphs needs our new layout. Okay, so the other one, it kind of worked correctly where the image and the text kind of slid underneath and on the mobile layout. So we're going to edit the one paragraph, change the layout to the new one we just created. I think I put some of my text out of order on this. So, the benefit of this, there's a lot less clicking around the UI with the expert mode and putting classes on stuff. You do get precise control over the markup. You can add unlimited fields to each of those left and right regions. And privileged users can't really break it. I don't know about you, a lot of times when we build a site and we hand it to a customer, they want all the privileges, right? They want to be admins, they want to click around in views and break stuff or whatever. Using the layout system means that they pretty much have to call somebody who knows how to deal with code if they want to, if they're going to break it. Whereas with the expert mode, people will go into places and edit stuff, and I don't know what happened to the classes on that. I don't know if you've ever heard that. It seems a lot less hacky to do it with the layout plugin versus using the expert mode field templates and cramming a bunch of classes into the UI. It seems a little hacky to me. So I feel like using layouts is sort of the right way. You do get nice responsiveness because you've altered the markup to anything you want. Okay. The conclusion, the limitations. So every single new layout that you want to create or UI sort of component or pattern, you've got to create a new layout for. Sort of a limitation. There's some coding. So really not a lot of limitations, are there? Advantages, probably the best performance out of the next method that I'm going to bring up. Okay, it's very dry. You need a template. You write a template. You can reuse that template any place you want. I'm sorry, I call it a template. It's a layout. So I think this is probably the right way to do things. But I'm not really content with that, and some of our editors aren't either. They want to be able to control the grid structure. What if in the middle of working on something they say, this one, instead of it being a 50-50 split, I want to do an 80-20. I want, instead of 6 columns and 6 columns, I want to have 3 columns and 9 columns. We want to give them that capability. All right, so let's get hacky. We're going to create a new paragraph, and it's going to have a ton of fields. And each field represents a set of grid classes, right? So you probably can't read that from here, but I've created on my paragraph, in addition to the item body and the item image, I have image large grid, image small grid, image medium grid, and then I have push-pull classes. Basically let's see if we go back here. Here we go. See all these classes at the bottom? Okay, so large 6. Well, I've created a field that has large 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a list field, so they get a select where they can choose any sort of kind of grid layout they want for this thing. Okay, so we've created a ton of fields. So Now we're gonna create our node. We've added this field to a content type. Now we've got all these little select boxes where they can choose the exact grid layout for each of the, for the image which we're going to display and the body which we're going to display. Okay, for some reason, field group and paragraphs don't quite play nice together all the time. So I wanted to actually organize all these fields and make a nice little collapsible UI where they could set all their fields and kind of collapse it. It's a little bit of a mystery right now. Maybe I could make that look better, but it's still a ton of fields for your editor to play with, for better or for worse, right? So now what we're gonna do, instead of layouts, we're gonna just do a template override, okay? So if you enable your twig debug in your settings, has anybody done that? Has anybody played with the twig debug stuff? So it gives you I got 2 minutes? Is that what that was? Oh, okay, my bad. So anyway, you enable your twig debug, and you can get your theme suggestion, your template suggestion. So paragraph, medium dash, paragraph machine name, .html.twig. Okay. So here, I'm going to take all of those class fields. Okay. So I've got my set image classes, paragraph field, image, large grid value. Okay, so I'm taking all of those field values and I'm turning them into CSS classes in my twig template. Okay, and then down here where I've got my content field grid item image, I've wrapped it. So this is really hacky, okay? So the first thing I do is, so you got the base paragraph classes at the top, okay? So it sets it on the container. Then I go attributes, remove those classes on my inside wrapper, and then I'm gonna add the image classes to it. Okay, so then I'm gonna close that wrapper, or I'm gonna put my field in there, and then I'm gonna close that wrapper, I'm gonna open another wrapper, and then I'm gonna remove the image classes, and now I'm gonna add all those text field values as classes. So now I've taken all those UI settings and converted them into CSS classes, and now it'll just output whatever they put, okay? So they could go crazy playing with grids. You're giving the editor complete control over your theme and your layout, okay? So you can get really nice responsiveness this way. But there are certainly some limitations to this, okay? So first of all, you're creating a ton of fields for everything, right? You probably reuse some of those fields because they're sort of structural classes in Foundation. May not be as good of performance-wise, right? Because with the layout plugin, all that stuff gets cached. But what you're telling Drupal in this case is this page, all those field settings, we've got to know what those are. We can't just cache the layout. We've got to get those field settings every time we load a page, right? And it might be able to cache the whole page, but it can't really cache those classes because they're dynamic.
Why can't you just load them on when you need it?
What's that?
Because you can load Twig like when you need it, right? I just learned all this, so I'm like, I think it's sweet, but yeah.
Okay.
In Twig, can't you load CSS like when you need it, right? You can load it on certain, like on a node, like a specific node, right?
But that particular template will only be loaded when that particular machine named paragraph is being displayed.
Oh, I see what you're saying there, man. Okay,
so that's actually the paragraph template for that particular field widget that we created. But that paragraph itself can be added to many different nodes and could be added to multiple content types. And it can be added to the same node 3 different times and have different configuration. So constantly those field classes, and really I have not experimented a ton with the caching effects of this, but it seems to me that because it's pulling field values and creating those classes, it's going to have a much harder time caching some of that. And somebody prove me right or wrong. I haven't gotten around to that yet. And actually playing around with it, I've got a little 500, maybe it's a 1 gig server that I was doing all this work on, and I didn't notice any performance issues, but I really didn't do any benchmarking with this. It does create an ugly UI, at least until field group and paragraphs start playing nicer together. Training, okay, because editors don't intuitively know what those grid columns and what all those push-pull classes and all that sort of stuff. So whatever UI framework, whether it's Bootstrap or Foundation or whatever you've created, you've got to show your editor how to do that. You're relying on the editors to make sane grid selections. So this will be really good. So when I build my site, I can put that in there because I know what I'm doing. And I'm not going to, make a 1-column image field to give you little tiny thumbnails. The advantage is you do give the editors the control. It's just kind of a cool little Drupal exercise to do this. And editors are never, no matter what layout choices you give your editors, they're never going to be happy enough. They're going to want the thing that you didn't create. So when you give them the kitchen sink, if you will, here, go make your own layouts. Maybe you'll make them happier. So at the end, appendix here, Foundation, CLI. Here's the bit bucket, if you see that. All of these slides will be posted to the DrupalCamp site. They're on Google Docs, and they're public, so you can access them. So does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said here today? I don't know if that's good or bad. So, fantastic. Is anybody excited to play around with the layout plugin, display suite, and panels? Go try out Zurb Foundation.
So I have a question.
Yes.
The site that I work on uses, would you call it panels or
Panels.
Panels.
Okay.
And I've not done anything with display suite. Is one kind of more effective than the other, or?
I would say they are there's some overlap in what they can do, but I look at display suite as really good for sort of finite control over your node fields, if you will. And then I look at panels as sort of a bigger piece. And I also, one of the things I use panels for a lot is to make non-node pages, right? So certain kinds of maybe landing pages that aren't nodes, where I'm maybe pulling in content from different views and blocks and stuff like that. It's not one or the other. There is some overlap though, because in Display Suite you can add a block to a field. It has dynamic block capabilities, so you could create a view on a node, or create a view and attach it to a node through Display Suite. So there's a certain amount of overlap. I feel like they're probably playing together a little better in Drupal 8 than even Drupal 7, but I do definitely use them concurrently. Yeah, and now that they kind of use the common layout plugin, that's great because you can use your layouts in either or. Okay, well, I think we're close to out of time. I want to thank you all for attending, and there is a $10 gift card taped to the bottom of one of these chairs to Starbucks, so I just have fun. Did you find it? Anybody find it? No?
Someone through 10 minutes we'll start taking everyone out of your room.
What's that?
Put your presentation on here for us. yours?
Sure.
We'll compensate for the discoloration. I'll come back and pick that up when I pick up the audio device.
Oh, here. Do you need this now?
No, you can wear it
Okay.
and walk out.
So I don't even know how
Sorry,
to.
what room? This is yours. I apologize.
This is.
That's the one I need you to use.
Oh.
Thank you.
Ay de mi. Oh, there's full screen. Can you believe it? I found it.
Was it F11 or something?
No, it was. Check this out. It's this little. Maybe you can. Windows.
Oh, that. Okay.
That is how you go full screen. So how do I exit, download as PDF? Is that what they want? He said download it and put it on there. I don't know what he wants. PDF.
We should have gone with it. We should have asked for people's opinions.
You said something a second ago about the difference between panels and display suite, where display suite is more on the field level. Can you elaborate?
Very good.
Panels more of a stick block here for you here.
Yeah.
Building on new.
I get that with panels. We use that.
So on where you would edit a display, so panels, you kind of go into panels, right? And you say, oh, I'm going to create a node override, and that's going to, you can create a variant for different types of nodes, all the different selection rules that are available to you in panels. Display suite, you're going to work with the individual content types so if you go into structure, content types, you pick a content type, and then you want to go to your manage display. And that's where display suite comes in. It works on that content type level, whereas panels kind of works on a very high level. You can go into panels and just load different fields from a particular content type, but it's really tedious, right? It would be really tedious to try to alter the display of different content types through panels, creating a variant for every content type and then loading in all the fields. Whereas display suite is really great for managing the display of a single content type. Does that make sense? Did I answer? You got that look like you did not answer my question.
So is there a way for handling how a field from a content type is displayed on a page?
Think about it as managing the display of the page, but you can organize the fields inside the display. So you get a lot. Now, turning on expert mode, you can, through the UI, alter the markup of those fields. And one of the things that trying to remember if I did this or not in my, no, I don't think I had to do this, where I was creating a plugin with a hidden region and then sticking fields in that region so they could be accessed in other ways. Display Suite is really cool. It's drupal.org/project/ds. If you haven't played around with it, I highly recommend, getting in there, seeing what it can do. Things like being able to load a block view in a field, and then you can use the contextual filter of the node, right? So if you've got, let's say you want to load related articles on a blog post, right? And you got a view, and you want to take the node ID of the view as a contextual filter. You can create a block view, and then in Display Suite, you can add that view as a field. And so you can then manage how it's laid out on the page with the other content. Now, I'm talking about in the content region of your page. I'm not talking about sidebars and stuff. In fact, I don't even really like using sidebars, right? Because sidebars are kind of wonky. I'd rather have tighter control over the content region. And so also with display modes, you can have different display suite layouts for each one. So maybe this particular, maybe in teaser mode, you don't want those related articles. You want something else. Maybe you want a picture of the day that comes out of views or whatever you want to do. It's your imagination. But I think of panels as sort of big and display suite sort of small, if you will. It's not 100% accurate, and there is a fair amount of overlap between what you can do in each of them, but I feel like each is suited to a different use case a little more.
One thing you can do is take, if you've got Drupal, Drupal fields are going to have item list, all this. You can totally override it, totally simplify your markup by just changing the class of your items. You can just cut out a whole lot of the div stuff.
I was thinking its own presentation on its own.
It's got
What's that?
It's really
its own presentation with nothing else.
Yeah. And it's still like a lot of work in progress. When I was working on this stuff, it was a lot of Drush cache rebuilds. In fact, I couldn't get panels working at all until I was like clear cache 3 times. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. If you, again, have any questions or comments, I'd love to get your feedback. This is the first time I've presented at a DrupalCamp. Hopefully it wasn't too rough. What format do you want the presentation? PDF?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.